And it has played into a larger conversation happening in secular movements about what our mission is. And so one of the things that I wanted to do this year is focus a little bit on why we do this. Beyond, it's the right thing to do. I think it's right that it's the right thing to do. I'm really proud of us for doing it. I don't even actually get to be that proud of it because it started way before I joined the board. But I think we're doing the right thing. The rest of the movement is really working to catch up at this point, and I think that's great. So we're going to take a few topics this year and talk about how that actually works, what it means when we stand up for people who are more than just atheists. So to start, I would like to bring Steve Peterson up. Steve has been part of this observation from the start, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what we've done here for National Diversity.
Thank you, Stephanie. This started as a rather innocent thing years ago when a number of us, including August, Shirley, Rachel Wilson, and a couple other members of our board of directors went to an AHA conference in Washington, D.C. And Ron Boston, who I actually associate with Americans United for Separation of the Sacred Church, not the AHA, gave a speech. And part of the speech, he said, there should be visibility of atheists, not humans. Second, and we should do a day of reason. So I'll give a little confession here. I always attributed it to Ron Boston. I didn't actually realize until years later that he was on the AHA board at the time. It was a collaborative effort of the AHA board that came up with the idea. I didn't realize that until there was 2 joint events going on. And I disputed the history and found out I was wrong and they were right. So it's, unlike Catholics, we give confession to each other instead of to the priest. So I don't know what benefit it. Maybe this is it. I have to speak publicly. Anyway, it was in 2002, Washington, the very first one, Washington area separately. And we did ours starting the next year. So this will be the 19th year that we've been here in the Rotunda. And when we first did this, no legislatures were coming near. Representative Phyllis Kahn came down, and she sat actually with these 2 gay activists who carried a sign that quoted the First Amendment, but missed a couple words here, which was ironic. It didn't all fit in their sign, so they had adapted it. And the ironic thing is they were also representatives of the atheists. She would have a picture taken with the First Amendment sign, but not with reference to the atheist sign. Next year, she gave and talked. She was the first legislator to speak. And later on, the May Day parade was the next Sunday. She marched with us and put on one of our T-shirts, and she got over her ambitions after that. So she maintained the secular caucus in the House up until she lost re-election to Illinois, who also spoke to her at this event. And then Mike Freiberg took it over. The first year Mike Freiberg spoke, Richard was the Secretary of State. He defeated Kiffner. And we tried to get him to speak, to give a walk to the Capitol, and he refused. And I finally said, Kiffmeyer did it twice. And Kiffmeyer hated us. But to her credit, she said, I don't like anything you stand for, but I respect your right to be here. And although that was a minimum standard, she at least gave us the respect to show up. So she would run from the day of prayer and come up here and talk to us. So at least she gets credit for that. And when I told Richie that, he finally agreed to come. And he was terrified. And Doug Rowe, that from Midpost was here covering the event. And he tried to talk to Richie, but what Doug wrote about it was Richie could not run out of there fast enough. For somebody who's a member of the Unitarian Society, it seems weird in my mind. So that's the dynamics that we've encountered over the years. Ilana Omar spoke to us. She told a story about why she left her homeland because of religious freedom for herself and her family. And her father wanted to get her out before she would be assimilated into the custom of marriage, into whatever the arrangements. And that was the year that she ran for Congress, and it had no impact. Mike Freiberg, who spoke at the same time Mark Ritchie did the first time, like Rose said, you know, there's going to be pictures of you standing under that sign, the Minnesota Atheists, in your re-election campaign. And Freiberg said, well, so what? He said, I'm not religious, that's just who I am. And the next year, Mike came, he won re-election, and his message was, guess what? It was a non-issue. All the way through the campaign, he waited for somebody to tell this story or show that picture of the atheist in the Capitol. And he said it was readily available to his opponents, and it was never used, and it never has been used. So, and that's been the case. We had, before Governor Walz was selected, Governor Walz would not answer. We did a candidate forum. Walz did not participate in our candidate forum. But his four other opponents for the Democratic nomination were members of the House, and they all came down here to speak to us. It didn't impact why they lost and Walz won. But to their credit, they had no fear of speaking to the atheist stand. In fact, there was a group photo on the atheist side. And that was their big thing for the many years. Stephanie just talked about this. You have to have a public face on who we are. And if you don't, they forget who you, they can demonize you until they can see who you are. Legislators, it's hard for them sometimes to make the session to get down here and speak. Before they took the offices out of the Capitol, most of the staff would come down here and sit. And that to me was always an important factor because they're the ones that dictate a lot of information that goes to their elected officials. And not only that, many of those people are the future elected officials. So talking to the staff members has a value. And I miss that part of it because they would make up half of our audience. So when they redesigned the Capitol and took the offices out, we lost half of our audience. And then over the years, now there's 2 day of reasons here in Minnesota. The humanists have a breakfast in the morning. They have the advantage of having their event when the session is not going on. And so legislators are more laid back and they're going to show up proudly. And they're humanists. They're a little bit less scary than the atheists. But they had impressive. I had a legislator who was religious who showed up there. So, however, we're working it out, we're bridging the gap, and we're making a difference as time goes on. We've had many legislators come over the years. Not a single one has had a negative impact. There's a secular caucus in the legislature today, started by John Marty and Mike Freiberg. And they have about 20 members. And nationally, there's a secular caucus. That's why we're on May 3rd. Jamie Raskin, who's one of the key people of the National Secular Caucus, thought that this would be better if we separated the two out, the day of prayer and the day of reason, in the long-term thinking. I kind of like the church people being out there and having them come in here and pray for us once in a while. But at the same time, we knock down barriers. Many times they would come up and they would say to us, gosh, I'll never forget this one guy. He's standing there and he's going, atheist. And they said, yeah, you're here, we're here, we all have the right to be here. And then we talked a little bit innocently, and he says, as long as you're sending your children to church, why would we do that? You want to send your kids to church? Go ahead. We're kind of in the critical thinking skills. And George, one time, encountered the chaplain of the Capitol, who later became Senator Day in the Hall. He made the mistake of telling George that atheists, describing atheists as people who don't believe, or that atheists are just agnostics without knowledge. And of course, George, with a degree in philosophy, had to explain the difference to him. And he got all glass guy and ran away real quick. When he was the senator, he seemed to think we were his friends because we had chatted with him from time to time in a friendly manner. He would speak to all the different religious groups, but he never would come and speak here. We offered it to him several times. The humanists generally have supporters who come. We've been willing to let anybody who wants to speak in front of our signs speak, whether they agree with us or not agree with us. And over the years, that has happened. So I think it's a tradition we keep up, even if we didn't necessarily agree with what the person said. And we sat there kind of stone quiet and said, okay, that's nice. And I gave them polite applause. Generally, we were respectful that they showed up. And they actually looked and said, there was a face of people that I've been demonizing over the years. And maybe we can get a sense of humanity that way for ourselves. And if we could achieve that over the years, we've probably done a fair amount. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Steve mentioned Jamie Raskin. I just wanted to note that Jamie Raskin does have a bill that he's working on to get the National Day of Reason recognized by Congress. And the American Humanist Association is currently running an action alert to have you ask your representative to sign on to that. Mine is Ilhan Omar. My job was super easy. I just said you came and spoke to us. I think we should keep that going. But if the rest of you haven't seen that and need a link, let me know. Make sure that's available for you. Talking about people who are not non-religious and some of the work we do with them. One of the things that we have long done as a group, and even though Carolyn turned me down to speak today, I need to say thank you because you've done so much work on it. One of the things that we've done is make sure that we do community service as a group. It's something that churches do. It is something that makes us feel part of the community ourselves. And we're going to have Nancy Hertz come up and talk a little bit about how that works and how that feels.
Thank you. I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of Steve and when say it short. Anyway, how we look in the world is really important. And when we do volunteer work, that's our opportunity to let people know that we do have values and we want to make the world a better place and we actually do things. I know sometimes if I talk to somebody about Minnesota Atheists and I'll talk about a volunteer thing we do and they're not familiar, you almost kind of get oh, like you do that? And I'm like, yeah, and we really appreciate it. We enjoy it. So I'm gonna talk just a couple of things that are currently going. One is some of us went and got our heads shaved in March for children's cancer, which was just a fantastic event. And again, getting our name out there that we're willing to do something to make a difference and earn some money. And Caroline has done some awesome stuff. She's done school drives to provide school supplies for children who normally wouldn't get them. Frequently, of course, a lot of our things are connected with going out to eat, but or drinking. We've done the walk to end hunger. I know this year is more than out to eat to end hunger, but an opportunity to remind all of us that or don't always have enough food, and that gives us a chance to remember that and to donate. Highway cleanup, again, looking environmentally at what helps the earth. And let me see. Okay, and then another one, and I'll shamelessly plug it, is I recently did a project where we made menstrual pads for young girls, reusable menstrual pads for girls in other countries who without them wouldn't be able to go to school when they had their period. And I'm hoping to make that a recurring event. And part of that, and with all of these, is also the social aspect. And we get to be together, we get to talk about things. And I know for myself, whenever I engage in any of these things, I was come out feeling good. And I also really appreciate the fact that our name gets connected to it. Like when we go the war at Christmas, that's the one I forgot. Where we go out, we bring presents for the kids who are going to be in the hospital overnight at Christmas. And I had a job that I was in and out of the hospital quite frequently, and so that has always been very important to me. But I also think it's neat to say the atheists did this. So thank you very much.
I am also short on very stable, so I'm going to do it myself. Thank you, Nancy. One of the things that I wanted to talk about this year, and picking up speakers I meant to reserve this topic for myself, is reproductive justice, reproductive health, reproductive rights. This year, the legislature here has done some amazing things to protect the rights of people to access reproductive health care. And we've been behind it for quite a while. We've volunteered, many of us, as abortion clinic escorts. We've gone out and we've protested, we've talked to legislators. We raised an unholy ruckus when a couple of national leaders in the secular movement suggested that maybe abortion wasn't a very important issue. We're finally seeing some payoff on that. And aside from the fact that owning the rights to your own body, owning the ability to determine how your life goes in terms of such an important decision is an important thing to protect on its own. I also want to talk a little bit about why it's important to us as a group. As many of you know, women have not always been valued in the secular movement the way that they should be. They have occasionally been treated as potential dates, as opposed to people who come to meetings in their own right for their own reasons. They have been treated as disposable, as speakers and thinkers and volunteers and even staff when they make too much noise. We, this is all we, I say they, but it's we. But the reason that that hasn't flown is because we are too important to this effort. We do too much of the work. We lead. We provide a wider variety of topics, for our activism and for our philosophy than a movement without us could ever do. But being free to choose our own lives is a huge part of how we're able to do that. I mean, several of you out here have been parents, are parents. You know how much work that takes. And that's with the ability to choose the circumstances under which you became parents. The religious right doesn't just want to take away freedom to their access to reproductive health care because they think that women should serve in a subservient role. That's part of it. But part of it also is that it's much, much easier to enforce that when you can keep women in poverty. When you can keep them working, both a paid job and an unpaid job, spending all of their hours, having a family and supporting it. We don't want that. There are a lot of us in this movement who have chosen not to have children for a variety of reasons. There are lots of us who come back to activism after having those children and having them grow up. But if we don't have any choice about that, if we're wearing out our bodies and our minds and using up all of our time and our resources, we can't do what we do for this movement, for broader secularism, for ourselves. And that's really, really important. Minnesota Atheists has pretty much always been right on this topic. I have complaints with this group. It took us a couple of years to get up to me, a little more gender inclusive talking about it, and I'm not doing a great job with it right now. In part because I'm looking at people whose stories I know, and that's resonating very hard with me. But we have always been on the right side of this issue. And that has made such a difference to who we are as a group, to what we value, and what we've been able to achieve. So I just want to take a moment and thank all the legislators and the groups that have done the work on this, and everybody associated with our local secular movement who has laid groundwork for the successes we've seen this year. And I hear that. Thank you. And now we are going to hear from August. A little bit about a time when we were required as atheists to take kind of a back seat when we had our own issues that we wanted to fight for and how that went. So August.
Minnesota Atheists fights to maintain separation of government and religion, not just for ourselves, but for the benefit of all society. We stand united with other groups in achieving that goal. The case in point are the Minnesota marriage laws. For a long time, we have known that Minnesota law basically only allows certain government officials and all members of the clergy to conduct legal marriage ceremonies. We knew the law had to be changed to allow our secular celibates to conduct civil marriages. And another issue connected to marriage law, we always support same-sex marriage. Since 1985, a year after our formation as the Twin Shepherd American Atheists, we have marched in gay pride parades and later, when possible, had peace at these events. Some years we participated in up to 5 gay pride festivals throughout the state. In 2004, as president of Minnesota Atheists, I was named an honored ally by Hope from Minnesota. We realized there were good reasons to support same-sex marriage, namely equal protection under the law, and no good secular justifications to oppose it. The ban on same-sex marriage amounted to theocratic rule. In 2012, Minnesota Atheists filed a friend of the court brief in a lower court supporting marriage in Minnesota in their efforts to allow same-sex marriage based on Minnesota state constitutional grounds. Also in 2012, there was an amendment on the Minnesota ballot to limit marriage to straight couples, and we were strong leaders in opposition to it. The theme on our t-shirts that year was Minnesota Atheists supports marriage equality, and they dug one out. Special trip to storage this morning to get things. So fortunately, that amendment failed. The next year, in 2013, Democrats took control of the Minnesota governorship, House, and Senate, and we saw an opportunity to begin lobbying the Minnesota legislature to allow qualified atheist celebrants to legally commit marriages. At the same time, though, the issue of same-sex marriage continued to sweep the nation. In 2013, it took center stage at the Minnesota State Capitol. We realized that this issue was more important than our issue. After all, atheists could at least get married by judges. Same-sex couples were not allowed to get married at all. So we set aside our secular marriage celebrant issue for the moment. In 2013, Minnesota Atheists testified at a hearing at the state capitol in favor of same-sex marriage. It eventually passed the legislature and was signed into law by Governor Mark Dayton. The next year, in 2014, the same-sex marriage passed, and with Democrats taking control of everything, we began the real work of changing the law to allow secular marriage celebrants to legal marriages. We spent a lot of time consulting with legislators and getting it written just right on our proposal. But unfortunately, we ran out of time and the mistake. From 2015 to 2022, Republicans controlled either the Minnesota House or Senate and blocked any efforts we made to change the law. Finally, this year, Democrats regained control of the Minnesota governorship and Senate. We approached the legislature early in the session and found they were already ahead of us. There were already bills introduced broadening the marriage celebrant law so that basically anybody could do it. This certainly solved our role, and we've been watching the progress of these bills. So far, there is disagreement between the House and Senate versions, and neither one has passed yet. We're keeping an eye on it. But what's missing this year, thanks in part to our decades of effort, is most of the talk will try to put civil marriage under the thumb of religion. Thanks to Minnesota Atheists and all the secular groups and individuals in our state who have voted and spoken out, more and more citizens of Minnesota are standing united with us in separation of government and religion.
And I would like to talk a little bit more about how an aggressive strategy in the legislature on an issue or a group that are often considered fringe and being treated like it across the nation right now is protecting the rights of people who touch us.
So as many of you know, I am overjoyed to be president of Minnesota Atheists, an organization that is a little bit higher. And I'd like to tell a story of persistence. the story of persistence, of getting up every day and going to work. Now, many of you may also know that I'm a big advocate for the state. I work for the state. I work in this building. I love my job. I'm speaking not as a public servant, but as a person. So this morning, I did what I always do and woke up ungodly early to drive in. This time carrying a box of stuff for today and coming in. And doing this for several months because it has been a very productive session, a very long session, which is good. We are making a lot of strides this year. But I want to talk about persistence. Persistence is the the first time I came to was in 2012. As the children's conference and some under constitutional this was nearly 52%. And it is easy to fight back and it's a lot harder to continue once you fight. The next time I was at the Capitol was less than a year later, it was like 8 months later, when because of the persistence of thousands of actors across the state, we not only had to keep the conservative but we had to pass same-sex marriage in the state of the South. The first state to do so was Democrat. There were other states also, but this one was important. It was a big deal. Story of persistence. I appreciate the persistence of everyone listening to me talking about persistence. I appreciate the persistence of the activists who, for decades, were working to make queer lives better. I appreciate the persistence of the members of the class action, Doe versus Ventura, who had removed the criminalization of sodomy laws, which, in fact, also included homeless. That was a unique thing in Minnesota. Most sodomy laws do not include that. Why stand? Fun fact. Relatively used as follows: not enough. Persistence. We keep marching. I've been with the state for over 7 years at this point, and I'm a proud servant. We keep moving, even when it's hard, and we keep moving, even when it's easy. Persistence. In this day and age, right now, there are dozens of states who are actually going to make people's lives, people's identities. I have dear friends in Missouri, because every year I talk about to a conference in Missouri. It's a long drive, persistence. Passion to leave because the medical treatment that they need to improve their gender is being made illegal. I want them to come work for Minnesota, or come to live in Minnesota, work in Minnesota, because we have this wonderful little game because of persistence. Sodomy laws in Minnesota go back a long time. The first court battles of it started occurring in the 60s. And those activists were fighting in every major city, every year, with their lives to try and make it so the act of loving the person that they love, of having the family they want, of having the basic respect of being called the name and pronoun that you say you are, having their identity affirmed in a world that is not affirming to them. The struggles that they went through. Persistence. Today, our state is not one that is succumbing to Christian nationalism. It's not one that is succumbing to hatred that is becoming more and more powerful. We know what's right and we're moving towards that, so we can be more accepting and loving place. Persistence. Many of you are probably familiar with the Stonewall, the place where the Stonewall riots first began. A lot of people would say that was the beginning of the rights movement, but we have to remember that the people who stood up for themselves after a long time of being bullied, after a long time of standing down when they should have stood up because they didn't want to accept, after they were persistent, they stood up and they fought back against the injustice. Many people think it was gay lesbians, but it was trans women of color who stood up after having their identities discarded, and they were treated like trash for their entire lives. Their identities never respected. Even the decades after that, they did not get their place in the history book that they deserved, but they kept moving forward. Persistence. That's it. I'm a really happy person because we do live in this place. In Minnesota, we're not fighting against unsafe events. Admittedly, there are a couple of members of the legislature who have opposed persistence. And yet, in our Capitol building, not only do we have banned books, we have a rule for library. In our Capitol building, we don't ban people on their gender identity. We affirm them. We say no. We don't require medical proof for gender transition, allow non-binary, non-gender identities in documentation. Because of the work of activists long before I was born, up until very recently, we have medical treatment available to those who need it. We have bureaucratic identities available to those who need it. And we're able to say, we belong here. Persistence. Even though in Minnesota, we do have April snow. We have a day where it's gotten 80 degrees, and then 2 days later we have snow, but we can make it through. Persistence. We can make it through the amount of snow that makes you question, not just why do I live here, but why would anything happen? Who would allow this to happen? Persistence. When I show pictures of the snow to my husband's nephews who live in Oregon, they don't believe me because they cannot believe that people can live without snow. But we do. Persistence. For now, Oregon is another state, but they don't have the same constitutional amendments, they don't have the same Supreme Court understandings, and they don't have the same dedication that we have seen in this state for decades. Persistence. That said, it's easy to fight when you're being attacked. It's hard to keep moving forward after a celebration, but that's what we must do. Because around every corner, every year, every session, every politician is another likelihood for people who want to remove the rights of people who need them, remove the care and compassion that they're deserved. And so even though it would be very easy to say, hey, we won, we must persist. That's not to say we shouldn't celebrate, because we should. That's not to say we shouldn't be happy for what we have, because we should. And that's not to say that we shouldn't keep looking for more, because we should. But it's a recognition that no matter what, we have to hold our ground, because if we don't, our ground will be taken from us. Persistence. Thank you.
I have a little confession to make, not just that I'm short. But also today's data freezing program is a little bit short because when we originally were looking at how we wanted to put this together, we were really hopeful that we would be able to get the legislators to join us again. That didn't happen last year because they were there on that floor fighting against absolutely ridiculous, terrible bills that would take away people's rights. Somehow we didn't plan for them to get out there and spend an entire session broadening and expanding rights and get cynical about politics. I did, so we're short today. But thank you all very much for joining us. I hope everybody thinks a little bit about how championing somebody who doesn't look like you, who's more vulnerable than you, because face it, being a non-believer is not shocking these days, but there are a lot of us. We have a decent amount of strength in numbers that some other groups don't have. But how championing groups that also face problems from religion makes our secular world and our secular movement stronger. Thank you all very much.
Steve's got something to say.
Anybody have a point?
Started off right away. I had supervised therapist. One of my really good
Oh, you're saying therapist.
No. Me personally, as a therapist. Kind of like,
All right.
yes. Yeah.
Just an attitude of complete disgust. But now,
Come on.
it's the other way around. It's like, just don't-
Well, it for me, because I sold the business, so there's a little, it's got less and less, but, a little like, and I actually was in our contract that I could mentor until I can tell. Well, and it was just really good, but she's called me, it's really although it's funny.
That is funny.
Well, that's true. Everything can change.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, I don't know, a year ago. All right, should we go call our lift?
You did, right?
We were like,
You probably could get a special market. Fishing.